Something is shifting right now, and you can feel it. Not in your phone, not in any message, but deep in your chest, where truth lives before words do. There are signals arriving that your rational mind keeps trying to dismiss. A silence that feels loaded. A presence that appears the instant you decide to stop waiting. A message that almost came but didn't. These are not accidents. At a certain point in every profound connection, nothing looks different on the surface. But underneath, the entire architecture has changed. You have probably carried this restlessness for days, maybe weeks. Not anxiety. Something stranger. A certainty without evidence, like the air itself has grown denser around you. Memories surface uninvited. Emotions arrive without warning. The sense of someone who is not physically present suddenly fills the room. Stop for a moment. Breathe. Your heart has been speaking this truth for longer than your mind wants to admit. Even if logic tries to override it, what you are experiencing is not wishful thinking or loneliness dressed up as intuition. What you feel is real. That quiet pressure behind your ribs, that new frequency humming through you, those are not symptoms of desperation. They are confirmation that an invisible bond between two souls has pulled tighter. Today I need to speak to you about the person who has been fighting themselves, the one who tried to stay closed but now carries something they can no longer conceal, even from their own reflection. They are genuinely terrified of losing you. Not in the possessive way, not the controlling kind of fear. Something far older and more raw. When someone has absorbed your energy into the fabric of who they are, and begins to feel that energy withdrawing, something ancient wakes up inside them. Sudden, uncomfortable, completely unwanted. For a long time this person operated from a quiet arrogance. They assumed you would remain there, patient, loyal, holding the light on while they deliberated about whether closeness was safe. But energy never stays frozen. The moment you shifted, the moment your energy stopped leaning toward them, you sent a tremor straight through the center of their world. It does not matter how carefully they constructed their emotional armor, how high they stacked their pride, or how convincingly they rationalized their distance. There comes a moment when the soul stops taking orders from the ego. In that moment, the soul registers the void and confronts the terrifying possibility that you will not be part of what comes next. That is precisely what is unfolding right now. As you hear this, you do not require a missed call or a long emotional message to confirm it. You already know because soul connections do not operate on schedules or follow logical timelines. They move through vibration. When a soul senses it is about to lose its energetic home, it begins moving toward it. What you are about to understand will explain why this shift is happening at this exact moment and why it lands so heavily inside you. We tend to believe silence signals endings. We assume distance equals forgetting. But in the language of energy, silence is often where the most seismic changes take root. The person who appeared detached, cold, or unreachable is now entering a reckoning they cannot postpone. The distractions that once muffled their inner voice have stopped working. The habit of burying their own feelings has collapsed. Something invisible is pushing them toward an action they did not consciously choose. This reaction is not coming from their willpower. It is rising from a deep structural need to restore the balance that your withdrawal permanently disrupted. To understand the full weight of this fear and why it is generating something unexpected, we have to examine what you actually did. Perhaps without any deliberate strategy, you rewrote the rules of this connection entirely. If you are prepared to receive this truth, write in the comments, "I'm taking my power back." You are in transformation. And that transformation is the entire engine of this story. For a long stretch of time, your energy was oriented outward, flowing constantly toward this person. It carried within it all the weight of waiting, of second-guessing, of quietly wondering if you were enough. Perhaps you lost sleep asking whether they thought of you, whether you registered in their world at all. That energy, even though it came from love, was being read on the other side as a kind of guarantee. As long as you carried the emotional weight of the connection by yourself, they had no reason to reach for it. But something cracked open. You began choosing yourself, perhaps without a master plan, perhaps simply out of exhaustion. You started reclaiming your energy, not as revenge, but as a return to your own center. The instant that happened, the entire frequency of the connection transformed. This is the physics of absence. In deep energetic bonds, the human soul cannot tolerate a sudden hollow space. When you stopped pursuing and released the need to seek them, a gap appeared in the relationship dynamic. Previously that gap had been packed with your persistence and your attention. Now there was silence. But not the hollow kind of silence. An interior kind of absence. This distinction matters enormously. Physical distance means two people are not occupying the same space. Inner absence is something else entirely. It happens when you are no longer seeking their reflection to feel valid. It is the precise moment you let go emotionally and return to your own gravity. That inner absence is what hit them, because you had given them total certainty of your availability. Picture two people gripping opposite ends of a rope. If you are always pulling, the other person simply has to resist. They invest nothing. The moment you release the rope to tend to your own wounds, they stumble. The expected resistance disappears. They feel the missing counterweight, and it becomes an unobstructed mirror of their own emptiness. Without your constant energy feeding their sense of security, this person is suddenly forced to generate their own emotional sustenance and confront a silence they created. They wonder why everything feels colder. They register that your heart is no longer offering itself openly, and that unsettles them more profoundly than any argument or ultimatum ever could. Emotional absence is a different category of loss. A person can adapt to you not texting. They cannot adapt to no longer existing as a priority in your interior world. Here the law of equilibrium activates. By withdrawing your attention, you stop the forward pressure. When pressure disappears, resistance has nothing to push against. The wall they built suddenly has no function. When the wall becomes useless, they are exposed to their own emotional truth with no buffer. It is as though the universe declares that what is meant for you can now begin moving. This movement is born from discomfort. The vacancy you left behind demands to be filled. Since you are no longer available to fill it with your constant effort, only they can fill it now. That is precisely why you feel this agitation in your body at this very moment. You are registering their energy searching for you. Even in their silence, they are unsettled. They are examining things they previously overlooked and mourning what they once treated as permanent. Your withdrawal did not sever the bond. It cleared away the interference and left them sitting alone with a truth they had been expertly avoiding. That truth functions like a mirror now, revealing the parts of themselves they stored in the dark. To fully grasp why this person is responding at this particular moment, we must look directly at the shadow and the mirror. Every human being carries what can be called a shadow, an invisible repository where we deposit everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. Fears live there, shame lives there, insecurities nest there undisturbed. When this person withdrew or turned cold, they were not truly reacting to you. They were reacting to their own shadow. The fear of losing you is now pulling that hidden material into the light, revealing something that was always present but sealed behind old wounds. While you were the one reaching toward them, you inadvertently served as a container for their projected fears. If intimacy frightened them, they could convince themselves you were simply too intense. Your presence gave their mind a surface to project their internal story onto. Now that you have stepped back, you have removed that projection screen. They sit alone in the theater now. They are forced to watch themselves without a filter. This experience is excruciating in its honesty. There is a deeper truth that explains why the loss of you feels so specific and irreplaceable. At a profound level, you represent something they recognize from inside themselves. We frequently search externally for what we have misplaced internally. Your way of loving, your particular quality of presence, mirrors a part of them they buried long ago. Perhaps you embody the vulnerability they sealed off. That is why your departure does not simply feel like losing a partner. It feels like losing a piece of their own identity. The fear of losing you is an awakening. They are beginning to understand that you are not interchangeable. Whatever they experienced in your presence cannot be replicated elsewhere. This realization arrives with its full weight because it exposes what genuinely matters. The shadow that once drove them to run now shows them that authentic safety lived inside the connection they dismissed. They see now that it was never about insufficient love. It was about an inability to hold what they felt without dismantling it. This inner confrontation is a war between the ego craving control and the deeper self that recognizes shelter in you. When a person operates from fear, they perform indifference. But when the soul perceives real risk of total loss, that fear loses its commanding voice. This essential core of them now sifts through memories, revisiting exchanges that seemed insignificant and now feel like turning points. They replay moments that have become pieces of a map they finally know how to read. It is as though life is conducting a private inventory of everything they failed to honor. Peace does not follow this recognition immediately. Conflict does. They feel torn between the version of themselves that chose distance and a deeper force that keeps orienting them toward you. This fracture generates behaviors that go well beyond ordinary sadness. What they are experiencing is a genuine restructuring. Even when their outward appearance remains stable, there are signals you will begin recognizing. External calm does not mean internal stillness. From the outside, everything may appear unchanged. They go to work. They appear at gatherings. They seem functional. But this surface presentation is extraordinarily fragile at this moment. Beneath it, they are navigating emotional and cognitive chaos. They are discovering that you cannot outrun what you carry within you. The restlessness has become a constant companion, quietly dismantling their peace at every turn. Among the clearest signs of this awakening is a disruption in sleep. It is highly probable that this person is struggling to sleep or waking in the early hours, most often between 3 and 4 in the morning. This is the hour when the mind's defenses soften. When the analytical mind surrenders to sleep, the soul assumes authority and begins to speak. They wake with heaviness in the chest and a formless dread. In that unguarded silence, their thoughts orient toward you. Distraction is no longer available. Your absence has texture and mass. Through daylight hours, the mind works against their efforts at normalcy. Thoughts of you fracture their concentration. They might be mid-conversation or behind the wheel when your image surfaces without invitation. These are not deliberate recollections, they are intrusions. They do not revisit conflict. They revisit warmth and safety. They revisit the particular feeling of being near you. Memory is editing their shared story, removing noise and leaving only the essential truth of the bond. This contrast with the present emptiness becomes almost unbearable. In the digital landscape of modern disconnection, this unrest has a specific and recognizable signature. Because pride prevents direct contact, they seek relief through indirect surveillance. You may sense this person quietly tracking your presence online. They do not leave evidence in the form of likes because acknowledgement would mean conceding that you matter. But they observe. They watch what you post. They check whether you are active. They return to old exchanges to feel your energy again. This is not curiosity. It is a compulsive need to confirm that you still exist in their orbit. When they see you thriving, when your energy appears settled and self-contained, they experience simultaneous relief and alarm. Relief that you are still there. Fear that you no longer need them there. This silent monitoring is their way of maintaining connection without exposing vulnerability. But it deepens the hunger rather than satisfying it. Each glimpse of you living well without them carves the absence deeper. They search for evidence that you are still waiting. When they encounter your new independence instead, the fear intensifies. They are confronted with the undeniable reality that their window is closing. This internal storm grows until it begins crossing the boundary between two people. Energy behaves like water. When one channel is blocked, it seeks another path. Because direct communication is sealed by pride, all this unspoken anguish begins moving through invisible pathways between you. You transition from passive observer to active receptor of their awakening. In a connection of this depth, the distinction between your emotional experience and theirs becomes porous. There are things that resist rational explanation, yet the heart comprehends immediately. Remember that you share an emotional field. Think of an underground reservoir connecting two separate wells. When one side is disturbed, the ripple crosses to the other. Distance is irrelevant to this transmission. You might encounter sudden mood shifts with no traceable source, a sadness that has no name, a fear that sits low in your stomach without logical cause. More often than not, these feelings do not originate in you. You are receiving the emotional weather of the other person. Their grief is traveling through the bond as your sadness. Their terror that it is too late is arriving as your anxiety. Their surge of love in an unguarded moment reaches you as warmth washing through your chest. This shared emotional field is the most compelling evidence that the connection has not dissolved. The invisible thread is intact. Life validates this through signs. Their name surfaces in unexpected contexts. A specific song finds you at the precise moment you contemplate releasing everything. You notice the same numerical patterns repeating, 11:11 on a clock, or sequences appearing in 3s and 4s. These are not decorations. They mark the movement of the process itself. Even your sleeping hours become a shared space. During daylight, their ego enforces the separation. But in sleep, the soul moves freely. You may find yourself dreaming of them with unusual clarity and intensity. These encounters feel more substantial than ordinary dreams. The communication flows without friction. There is physical closeness and the weight of honest words. These are genuine meetings, moments where your souls are negotiating resolution before it arrives in physical form. If you have been receiving emotions that don't feel like yours, or finding these signs accumulating around you, express it in the comments by writing, "I perceive it." This act of naming strengthens your trust in what you already know. All these signals are preparing you. They are orienting you toward the recognition that the energy between you has reached its maximum pressure point. The resistance this person has maintained for so long is being eroded from the inside out. Just before any structure breaks, there is one final intensification. Darkness is always most complete in the moments before dawn arrives. Before a person finally surrenders to what they feel, the ego launches its most ferocious counterattack. This is the stage where most people surrender hope and pull away at the exact moment transformation is closest. You may observe this person increasing their distance or sharpening their coldness. They might vanish entirely or perform a complete lack of care with unsettling conviction. Do not be deceived. This behavior is not evidence they have moved on. It is actually the most reliable signal that their defenses are disintegrating. Consider a stretched elastic band. To release forward, it must first be drawn back to maximum tension. What you are witnessing now is that final tension before release. The ego senses its own imminent defeat. It recognizes that it is losing the internal battle against the depth of what they feel. Their love for you has grown so disruptive that it is destabilizing their entire illusion of control. What follows is a terminal act of self-protection. They are not resisting you, they are resisting themselves. The coldness is a last attempt to convince their own nervous system that you are not necessary. Admitting that need would mean acknowledging the full weight of their own fear and wrongness. This moment is your test of discernment. Do you trust the external behavior or the internal knowing? If you reach toward them now, you allow the ego to retreat to safety. If you remain anchored in yourself, the pressure will complete its work. The more absolute the external silence, the more deafening the internal screaming. This person is actively performing a lie. Every cell in them reaches for you while their mind insists on the opposite story. This contradiction is consuming them. Maintaining the mask of indifference requires enormous energy. No one can sustain it permanently. The energetic force of this connection is like a river building behind a dam. The ego can reinforce the wall with more pride, but if the river keeps swelling, fed by genuine love and the void your absence created, the structure will not hold. When it goes, the collapse is not gradual. It is an inner seismic event. It forces a total halt. The person who constructed elaborate barriers of distance and cool detachment is suddenly overwhelmed by a current they cannot redirect. They understand finally that the price of maintaining control was too steep. The wall collapses not because you pushed it, but because their soul gave them no alternative. What follows is the movement you have been sensing without being able to name it. A signal or a message that carries different weight than anything before. They return not out of habit or convenience, but from the recognition that the bond can no longer be ignored. The truth has found them, and it brings them back to you, carrying the understanding that you are the only place where their soul can stop performing and simply rest. When the wall finally gives way, the journey from resistance toward action begins in earnest. This person who spent seasons in retreat, now enters a period of deep internal accounting where they examine the debris of their own pride. They begin recognizing that the silence they wielded as protection actually became their confinement. In this new territory, the fear of losing you transforms into a fierce drive to restore what was damaged. The question is no longer whether to reach out, but how to cross the distance their choices created. This is a period of acute vulnerability for them. They resemble someone stepping into daylight after sustained darkness. Every memory of you they suppressed returns now with crystalline precision, and they begin understanding the connection not as something threatening but as the most valuable thing they have ever held carelessly. As they draw closer energetically, you may notice a spreading calm where restlessness previously lived. The tug of war has ended. They released the rope and the strain is gone. You might find that your own impulse to monitor them or search for signals begins fading, not because your feelings diminished, but because you sense at a level beneath thought that the searching is finished. The energy is now converging toward physical manifestation. During this transitional period, they may begin making small tentative gestures to test whether a path back exists. A mention to a shared acquaintance, appearing somewhere they know carries meaning for you. Posting content that speaks past its surface to the only audience that matters. They are navigating a route back that does not require their ego to be completely flattened, even though their soul has already surrendered everything. The final stage in this unfolding is the direct breakthrough. The moment this person locates enough courage to speak honestly. This typically arrives when the weight of your absence definitively outweighs the terror of being truly seen. When they finally reach out, the quality of it will feel unlike anything that came before. Not the familiar patterns, not the surface-level deflections. There will be a density to their honesty, an unpolished realness in how they communicate. The words may be imperfect, but the frequency behind them will be unmistakable. This is the actual beginning of healing between you. This is where the opportunity emerges to construct something entirely new on a foundation of truth rather than the shadows where the old version lived. You held your ground and reclaimed your own center. Now the universe is delivering the physical results of that interior work. This movement toward you is not a cautious approach, but a sudden shattering recognition that time is no longer infinite. When a person arrives at the outer edge of their own resistance, they undergo what can only be called a point of no return. They survey their life and everything they substituted for you, their achievements, their avoidances, their need to remain in command, and all of it registers as hollow. The fear of losing you has finally completed its function. It has stripped away the fabrications. They are now in a state of active preparation. They are assembling words, waiting for the right convergence of timing and courage to step back into your life unburdened by the full mass of their past failures. This person is in the grip of profound regret, not as punishment, but as a precise teacher pointing to every specific place they went wrong. As they prepare to act, you will notice your own energy growing unusually still. This is the ultimate confirmation that the cycle is reaching its end. You are no longer transmitting signals outward or scanning for them, because the connection is now being powered by their movement. You may even arrive at something resembling indifference, and that is the most magnetically powerful state you can inhabit. This quality is not emotional numbness or the death of caring. It is the complete dissolution of need, and by residing in that state you generate a gravitational field of extraordinary force. They feel this change in you and understand with sudden clarity that if they do not act now, the door will not remain open. This urgency is what shatters the final remnant of their pride. They comprehend that you are continuing forward regardless of their choice. The idea of a reality where you are genuinely gone is something they discover they cannot hold. The actual return tends to arrive through something that appears ordinary but resonates with enormous meaning. A simple greeting, an innocuous question. But underneath the plain surface it is a complete surrender. They are checking whether the bridge survived. When this happens, remember that you are the one who established the new terms. You do not return to the old patterns of pursuit or over-explanation. The shift occurred because you chose yourself first. The only way this connection remains healthy is if that choice continues. This person is returning to an evolved version of you. They must grow to meet who you have become. The bond is being reconstructed. But this time its architecture is built from genuine respect and equilibrium, instead of fear and manufactured distance. As this person prepares to re-enter your world, they are going through a shedding of everything they used to be in relation to you. They are beginning to understand that whoever walked away cannot be the one who walks back in. This accounts for why the waiting has felt so extended. They needed to dismantle their own barriers before they could build an honest bridge toward you. They are looking at you now with a quality of attention that has wonder in it, and respect, and something adjacent to awe. By choosing yourself, you demonstrated a strength they find both magnetic and humbling. They are not returning to someone who will absorb their neglect. They are returning to a person who has proven they know their own value. This rebalancing of power is precisely what guarantees the new version of this connection will operate from equality rather than one person perpetually bearing the entire weight. In these final moments of separation, the energetic draw takes on an almost physical quality. You might feel an abrupt warmth expanding through your chest, or the inexplicable sense of being observed even in your solitude. Their soul is reaching toward yours, feeling for a place that will receive it without punishment. They are looking for a sign that honesty will be met with openness. While they remain frightened of rejection, the suffering of continued separation has become categorically worse than the risk of a no. They are arriving at total transparency. All the performance, all the careful management of how they appear, all the studied detachment, it has burned away in the heat of how much they have missed you. They are prepared now to show you who they actually are, including the parts that were far too frightened to love you with full commitment the first time. When the breakthrough finally arrives, it will feel like the release of a pressure that has been building for longer than you can track. The confusion that accompanied you through all of this will dissolve in a single instant. This reunion is not simply two people reconnecting, it is the emergence of a completely different kind of dynamic. You taught them what you require by demonstrating it through how you treated yourself during the silence. As you move together into what comes next, you will find that the conversations reach deeper and the honesty arrives more naturally. The fear of loss has been replaced by a bone-deep appreciation for what was nearly surrendered. You have both been transformed by this passage, and whatever love remains has been through fire and emerged harder, more enduring, and fully capable of existing in the real world without the performance of masks. As this connection enters its final stage of arrival, this person is recognizing that their old way of existing no longer fits the person they are in the process of becoming. They stand at a threshold looking back at squandered time and forward toward the possibility of proximity to you again. This is an extraordinarily quiet and serious internal moment for them. They are no longer sedated by the noise of their social world or protected by the hollow comfort of their own defenses. They are focused entirely on the reality of your value. They see with complete clarity now that while they were occupied with protecting themselves from being hurt, they were inflicting the deepest hurt on themselves by remaining distant from the one person who ever truly understood them.